who pay the ultimate sacrifice. Wherever they may be in the land of the dead, let's put some smiles on their faces by letting them know that they did not sacrifice their lives in vain. Ladies and gentlemen, this Congress is of strategic importance. As the theme implies, we have an enormous assignment to do here. We shall attempt to strive at the largest platform ever, or to attain the goal of bringing all divergent opinions to forge a common platform. This may appear we should take the challenge to pursue this goal with audacity and fairness of purpose. This Congress is dubbed the Congress of Hope in the homeland. This goal of unity is the aspiration of our people. If we truly represent them, then we must have a consideration for their high crown. We are meeting here to also consolidate our gains registered so far in the struggle and to strengthen our unstoppable resolve to carry the struggle forward. SCACUF Unity Initiative is a welcome relief and a milestone achievement. It is fair ground to capitalize and to build on it. It may not have been the best of foundations, but we can and will do better with it. The mainstream consortium Thank you. The mainstream consortium is divided as the interim leaders don't seem to agree with all the founding members. The differences existing amongst and between the AGC, SCYL, SCNC, SCAM, Ambazonia, WCA, SINGA, SCACUF, SCADEF, SCAPA, SCTF, etc. must be resolved during this Congress. If we must agree, then it should be. If we must disagree, then it must be disagreeing in order to agree. However, we must also stress the fact that the Southern Cameroons struggle is above one single group, no matter the size of that group. Therefore, we are compelled to seek agreement and understanding even when there is disagreement. This is the only way forward to defeat the enemy. We should not necessarily have a common ideology. We may not employ the same methods of action, but we must agree because we have a common objective. Let the outcome of this conference be a stinker to La République du Cameroon. We do not only want the initiative of SCACUF to be left at the level of endorsement, but we want full recognition and participation of all. Process has the duty to provide this wider international platform. The international community is watching and expecting us to come up with this type of platform. La République du Cameroon is benefiting from our disunity and our poor organizational capacity. we have the duty to overcome these shortcomings and to bring our struggle on a different level. Our people in Belgium have put in hard-earned resources, time and effort to provide an impetus for this goal to materialize in Brussels. Let this opportunity be embraced by all of us to realize the dream of unity, which seemingly appears to be the last hope and wishes of our people in the homeland. This Congress also aims at encouraging countries of Europe to be organized and to form functional structures in order to be able to be part of any initiative or wider platform. For the national or homeland, Southern Cameroonians in Belgium launched the initiative of the platform created by SCACUF. It is certainly a step in the right direction. We recommend that this initiative be supported and empowered to embrace other groups. There should be broad-based consultations and an agreement resulting in a unified front. This is the prime objective of this Congress. Today, we shall constitute various committees. We will have, for instance, resolutions drafting committee, structural transformational committees, etc. The term of reference of these committees shall be let out together and get them functional as circumstances will demand.
We have a blackout here.
Hello? It's okay. Shall we proceed? My eyes cannot see. Okay, let's proceed. Today, we are going to come out with our resolutions, and tomorrow by 12 noon, we shall be converging again here to read out those resolutions and take our closing remarks. Southern Cameroonians in Belgium have worked relentlessly in the face of all adversity and stress to overcome the last-minute hurdles to hold this Congress. On behalf of all the delegates, on behalf of all our comrades here, I wish to extend a word of appreciation to the members of the national and regional executive in Belgium for their sacrifices and the spirit of solidarity they've shown. The same appreciation goes to the members of the various planning committees in charge of executing specific tasks geared towards the organization of this Congress. We are not forgetting the women. I wish to pay homage to our women who have been remarkable in the planning and the organization of this Congress. Our women are out speaking loud and clear, taking charge of their destiny and their kids, giving their all for our homeland, organizing women's actions conferences. We encourage Ambazonia women worldwide to challenge the men in this unity strife. Permit me to pay particular gratitude to the local organizing committee, especially Dr. Ayamba, is unfortunately not here. Dr. Ayamba Larry, who is the president of the planning committee of this conference, and the coordinator, Mr. Atanga Masos. This organization might not have been the best as you could have witnessed, but we promise to do better in the future. Lastly, we want to thank the wider European delegates who all harness ideas, financial and material resources for us to live this event as we see today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what Belgium has to offer to the struggle. We are sure to do even better in the future. God bless Southern Cameroon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Before we continue with the first talk that will be given by Comrade Millian, he's one of the leaders of SCACUF. I would like to give some directives. Please, if you feel as to visit the rest, out of the door, you go out and take the first set of elevators. You arrive at a small balcony, a lobby. You cut across, there's another main door. You go out, you come out somewhere like a corridor, just cross the right and enter the main door, and then you look to your left. I'll take it out of my game. I'll take it out of my game. Okay, and there's another one under the stairs. But the one that was given to us is the one at the reception. So the one at the reception. So if there's another one under the stairs, that's fine. But the general one is at the reception. So there's one also under the stairs. So you can check under the stairs. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move straight away to Comrade Milan. He'll be giving us a brief talk.
Thank you so much, Mr. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, compadres. I have been informed by the MC or the coordinator that I only have a short time to make this presentation. So I'm going to be a bit rushed, but please bear with me. He wants me to rather use a shorter time to do my presentation and then allow for more time for questions if there are. I'm hoping actually that there are no questions. I am not able to see the presentation and my laptop is there, so it has got to be either from here or from there. So I'm going to be standing in an awkward position, but I hope that the most important thing is the presentation. Now, while we're still busy to get this technical part of the thing done, my presentation is basically going to be on and around the conception of SCACUF, the Southern Cameroonian, Ambazonia, Consortium United Front. A very ugly name, but it is ugly for reasons, for reasons that you will understand once I do the presentation. But we felt that we rather have results than try to go for beauty, and that was the approach. So, Marcellus, can you do it? Can I do it with that?
Yeah, I think.
Otherwise, you can do it manually. I can just say, yeah. Okay. The major reason I was very keen to do this presentation, but because on arrival yesterday and having been traveling consistently and non-stop for the past few days, I've been doing my work one day at a time. I was hoping that I would be able to steal a bit of the night and prepare a presentation, but thanks to Belgium, and thanks to everybody, actually all of us, the fact that we just had so much to say and a lot to contribute. We stayed up until 5 a.m. this morning. So when I woke up this morning to try and do the presentation, I couldn't put it in graphics like I would have loved to, but still I've got something which I think will speak to you about what we have done. Now, when the conception of SCACUF came about out of a number of concerns, and part of that concern was the fact that the leaders and at the time the consortium, and you know the fight that was going on at home, we felt that these people were being pushed in directions which would get them to fail. And so we started engaging them to say, guys, there are certain mistakes you must not make. The fact that the regime is getting you to sit in meetings on a daily basis, every day, you finish at 2 a.m., at 7, 8 in the morning, you're starting all over again, there is a very strong possibility that they will wear you down mentally, physically, and otherwise. So it is important that you start thinking, and for people who are negotiating with you and are able to make time for rest and recuperation. So you have the Prime Minister comes and engages you for a few days, he withdraws, then the Minister comes, the Minister withdraws, somebody from the Prime Minister's office. That's probably one of the simplest strategies of negotiation, when you wear down your opponent. And while the regime was doing this rest and recuperation strategy, you had the same old actors sitting with them in meetings. And we thought these guys are making mistakes. So we started engaging them. And in the process of engaging them, we realized that they were also worried. They were worried about the fact that the regime was playing a game, but they had no choice. They had to continue to engage. And when it got to the impasse where the regime was saying, you are now beginning to delve into political matters. This was first and foremost a civil society matter. You are unions. Now you're beginning to discuss issues of federation. That means you're delving into the political and you're not the right actors. Then we felt it's time to bring in the politicians. And the fear at the time was, if we don't do that quickly, then what might happen is that, as usual, the regime is going to handpick a number of individuals that we know to sit around the negotiation table and sign on our behalf. So it was important that we get people, strong, able negotiators to sit on the table on our behalf. And so we managed to convince the consortium leaders at the time to say, why don't you come for a meeting and meet with leaders in exile and others, so that you start to be able to build the front that will confront this regime when the time comes. We didn't anticipate that they were going to be arrested, and just as this was being finalized, they were arrested. Then the few of them went into hiding underground, and so the whole plan that we had put in place kind of crumbled. And we now had to go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, what do we do? In the course of this conversation, we then, after a week or two, we restrapped our boats and decided we need to do something. We are not going to give up because some of them have been arrested, but let's work with those who are still available. And by then, as you may know, some of them had slipped through the border to Gabon, through Nigeria, and so on. The bottom line was that a few of them had left. By then, we had already started talking to a number of the leaders in the diaspora. And we then came up with the idea of having a meeting, a round table that would get them to talk and start thinking, and which was basically to develop a joint strategy for all the movements. It doesn't matter what the perspective is, we've got a common enemy. Let's bring the different perspectives around the table and we confront the common enemy, knowing exactly the position of each and every one. The second key issue that we wanted to do was to develop and adopt a global plan of action, ensure that every actor is able to bring their contribution to the table. Establishing a visible and united leadership based on the strength of the movement. Now, this is an addition. We had lots of conversation with different actors planning for this. Some of you may know Mr. Dennis Atemken. I was with him on the phone on almost a daily basis. And he was pushing for a united leadership, a visible leadership. My position was that we are not capable as, and maybe I need to give you a bit of background. I met almost everybody yesterday, that's why I didn't introduce myself, so I'm assuming that you know who I am. My name is Milan Atam. I'm based in Johannesburg, but I am not part of the South African leadership, I'm not part of any structure, and I'm not part of any movement. So my involvement came more as a result of the fact that I stayed on the side for a while and had a lot of criticism because I could see a lot of errors and mistakes that were being made. And for me, it was like, I know this thing is going to fizzle out in a month or two, so let's just forget. But there was a lot of pressure, and it got to the point where I thought we've made a lot of progress, and I could either sit on the side and continue to criticize or step in and make my contribution. So when I came up with this idea and started talking to the consortium leadership, and they bought into it, then I went to the South Africa leadership, whom I'm sure you know. Many of them have been involved in this. I then sold the idea to them and said, listen, we can do this, but I cannot do it alone. I'm going to go out and mobilize a lot of money, but I don't want the money to go through me. So will you allow me to mobilize the money and put it into your structure? And they agreed. And so a team of 3 individuals were deployed, and they came and worked with me to put the project. Now, but through that we were consulting a whole lot of people. And like I said, one of them was Mr. Dennis Atemken. Dennis was of the opinion that by whatever we do, when we come out of the round table, we need to have a visible leadership. My position was, we do not have the mandate. These guys don't even know us, let alone wanting to walk into a meeting and tell them that you need to walk out with a leadership. Let's just, not too ambitious, let's just agree that we want a strategy, let's agree that we want a plan. If they buy into this, that is a step forward. Then the rest, the leadership will come later on. And of course, the establishment of strategic organs with representation of all movements. Now, many of you may know that we are dealing with movements, with individuals, with leaders, who, whether we like it or not, come with certain personalities. Some of them have got very strong personalities, very strong ideas of their own, and when you put all of them in a room and you tell them that we want to go in this direction, very often they all want to go to the same direction, but using 5 different routes. And so we felt we needed to find a way for all of them to move towards the objective without necessarily compromising their stance. And that is how we then took the initiative to organize a meeting to pull the leaders. And this initiative took over a month because we kept moving. It was a moving target. For one moment it was Calabar, and then it was Dakar, it was Addis, and I think at some point it was the UK. And at every moment we were compromised. It was always either a security breach, or somebody ran their mouth, or information went out. But our fear was we are convening all our leaders to sit in one room. What that means is, if the enemy knows that and they decide to attack, then you basically wiping your whole leadership. So security for us was the #1 concern. So we then organized the conclave, and in organizing the conclave, many of them, actually we took them on a blind date. It got to a point where I didn't trust my team so much. They were doing a good job, but I wasn't sure who was talking to who. So even the venue, the only information we sent out was, if you're holding a Cameroonian passport and you are invited, be on standby. We will let you know when to go to the airport. You will know the airport you're landing at, and we'll get you to the room of the meeting. So many of them were not happy because it was indeed a blind date, but that's how we did it. There were those who came a day later because they wanted to find out first, is it true that this thing is happening? But eventually, the majority of them came. Invitation went out to everybody, and I'm saying this, I need to be clear with this. Invitation went out to everybody we thought was anybody that could make a contribution. Those who came, came. Others did not come for whole lots of reasons that was out of our control. But our approach was, we are not going to wait for anyone. the train will move from the moment we meet, and the train will continue to move, and everybody is going to jump on the train sooner or later. That was the approach. And out of that, like I said, it was the regime's countless games and the meetings with the leaders, but it was the need. In fact, the Carpe Diem moment, I don't know, are there any Latin language speakers here? But yeah, Carpe Diem. Well, we thought it's the moment, we need to seize the moment. Like I said, many of us may have been reluctant to get involved, but then getting involved was you realize that this is the moment. Our people have made sacrifices, we've taken this giant step. Do we sit back and let it roll back, or do we move in and seize the moment and move with it? And so we were able to sell this to them. But we were also able to sell the fact that we needed to build on the momentum of the struggle. Whatever we say, whatever any leader steps up to them and says, oh, I'm the leader, everybody, we need to remember that this was the people's revolution. When Mancho BBC walked into a coffin and said, shoot me and bury me in the coffin, the people had taken the power from the leaders and they were leading. And so it became a matter of us seizing the moment and ensuring that the people were part and parcel of this revolution. And of course, the need to start engaging host and friendly governments as a collective. Now, many of you had listened to the different interventions of last night, and almost everybody was saying the same thing. You cannot call. So, you cannot engage a government. When you go to engage governments, very often, they are asking the question, who do you represent? And if the answer to your question is, oh, we are representing a group of individuals, then they are not interested in talking to you. Last week or about 2 weeks ago, it's the same kind of response I got from the Namibians. I went to see the Namibians to say, you owe us a debt and it is time for you to think about paying that debt. You may know that a lot of Namibians grew up and went to school with us in parts of our country. They lived in our homes as children, they were brought up, and many of them are now sitting in high positions in the Namibian government. And I keep using the example of the Vice President of Namibia today, a woman who actually went to school in Sierra Leone as part of that project. But many of them went to school with us, be it Bishop Organ, a whole lot of colleges they went to, and now they're highly placed. So I was there to say, guys, there was a time when we hosted you, we teach you a favor. Today you're in government. Can we come to you to return that favor? And of course, they're very simple, and I think our workshop, I saw him just now. Yes, they had the same thing with the Namibian government. The question for me was, who are you? Who do you represent? For me, it has been more on an informal basis, but I think when we get to the time when we start talking to them formally, we need to be doing that based on the fact that we represent our people. So it was important. And of course, the importance of having a joint fundraising strategy. This is very important. I need to say there are some individuals who have been just sterling in terms of the contribution they made to this initiative. There is a gentleman who was able to put in, I think, close to $15,000 alone just to make sure that others put in a bit less, $1,000 here, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, but generally a few individuals. And in order not to compromise the security of people, we didn't go out and do a massive fundraising. We went to individuals, knocking on doors and talking to them quietly. Many of them are individuals who don't want their faces to be seen, but they make contributions. Now, when we met with the leaders, our approach was a very simple one. We knew, and like I said, these are mostly gentlemen. I think there were no, I can't remember any woman in the room who represented the movement, but there were women and some really strong women. But then we challenged them, and the question we were asking them was, why is it that you've been doing this for the past 30 or so years and you're not succeeding? There must be something that we've been doing wrong, in as much as we're doing a lot that is right. Unless we are frank and honest to ourselves, we're not going to move forward. And so we started challenging them. And it was a workshop. It wasn't like a conference where people came and read papers. It was a workshop where we pull them out and take them into groups, do group work, come back and report. And really, really all men, but they were very enthusiastic and they gave their all to the process. And out of that, we did establish that if we continue to do the same old things, the same old way, we will continue to produce the same result. We do not think that the regime is super smart. It's just that we haven't been smart enough to match the regime. So let's start thinking smart and start pushing our own agenda. The second was one key thing that came up, and again, I've been in most of the meetings and listening to the leaders, and even last night, I did a lot of listening because I just wanted to know. One key thing that continued to run across the thread is the fact that we have had the tendency to focus on the domestic. We're looking at the regime and saying this is the enemy, and we keep hitting, which is true. But the enemy is just the regime is just a representation or a representative of the enemy. And unless we identify the real enemy, we will be hitting on a punching bag, and the punching bag will be looking at us because we are hitting on the wrong spot. So it is important that we internationalize our issue. And the issue is that we mustn't focus on the regime alone. The regime is one tiny component of a big problem, and that we were able to establish. I made mention of the force of the people. I think I've mentioned that already. And I keep giving the example of a friend with whom I engaged, and at the time he was like, no, this thing is just it's just a thing, it will fizzle out. And I was like, yes, 2 months ago, I was saying the same thing. This is a revolution. He said it's not. Interestingly, he called me 1 month later and said, Milan, you were right. This thing is actually a revolution. And I like to talk about this gentleman because he has played a very important role in the political arena in Cameroon. He has been part of the underground for decades. He has been to jail. He has made a lot of sacrifices. And being from the other side of the border, he didn't take us seriously. But eventually he came and said, you guys are doing a great job. And in fact, he was one of the architects of the ghost towns of the Billmont in the 90s. And he came back and said, you guys have brought in an aspect that we never thought about, and that is what is really a winning strategy. Unlike the 90s where we went out and confronted the gendarmes, what you have done is that you've decided to stay at home. These guys don't know what to do with you. Do they come into your house and pull you out so that you can confront them? So civil disobedience, whether we like it or not, was a great strategy by us who were behind this whole strain at home. And then, of course, I've mentioned the weakness of our fundraising, and I'm going to talk to that later. I'm sorry I'm rushing, but I know that I have been given a very short time. And of course, militantism, passion with limited implementation for action plan. Now, we've heard a lot of what do I call it? There's been a lot of rhetoric about the things that we're going to do. We're going to do this, we're going to do this. Is Dr. Apanga here yet? Not yet. I had the same conversation with Dr. Cho Ayala, and I'm challenging them. When he came to South Africa, he went out en masse, we mobilized a lot of money for him. We are waiting to see what will happen. It is not enough to keep saying we will. We want to see the action. When we see the action, I can guarantee that we'll mobilize any sum of money that we want. And I think that has been the tendency. We've been talking. The time has come to do. Now, if you ask me this morning, just now, or last night, I already know that Limbe, something happened in Limbe. I don't know if you know. But something happened to Victoria. But I can tell you that. Exactly. I can tell you that every single store, every single market, every single shop, every single student that faces a challenge at home, I can tell you exactly where it happened, at what time, who was behind it. So I know the people who are doing it, and these are people who are doing it out of very little resources. Now, those who are getting a whole bulk of the resources, we are challenging them to now start to carry out big action. So we talked to the leaders and we asked them. We thought it is time for us to now try and focus on the issues that matter. And once again, you'll see it came up in our discussion yesterday. We started with the structure. it is important that we define first of all what we want. We need to be able to come up with a strategy. Strategy precedes structure, I keep saying. And we need to define, we need to set up organs and define the terms of reference for them. The positions will come later. Once we know what we want to do, once we know where we want to go, then we will know what kind of transport, the mode of transport we're going to use. But we cannot determine the mode of transport before we even know what the destination is, or the way that, the road that we are going to use and how rocky or not it is. So it is important. Now, we also thought we have been raising a lot of money. And this I'm saying from a purely South African perspective, but I know that this runs across the board. We have been raising a lot of money, and I think there's been quite a bit of waste and wastage of resources. Because like I was saying, I told a few colleagues, somebody calls me and says, I'm going through a lot, and then I quickly take out something and I send to them. But that same person is calling each and every one of us, and we are sending. And what is happening now is that we are not coordinating our efforts. The time has come for us to ensure that we coordinate our efforts and make sure that every cent counts. If I'm saying now, standing diplomatic presence. Yeah. Standing diplomatic presence. We were not very nice to the leaders when we spoke about this. They were not very happy about the way we put it, but it was the simple truth, and we need to confront the truth and then we move on. If you want to represent the people, if you want to go out there and start talking to government, you need to look like a government. You need to dress like a government. You need to be able to speak the language. You can't go. In fact, this gentleman I'm talking about actually gave me the example of a political party whose name I'm not going to mention. But he organized a meeting with them in Burkina Faso with the president, who used to be a student at the military school in Yaoundé. And they went for what is normally known as the socialist movements or parties convergence. And when they arrived, he organized a meeting to meet with the president. And when the president met with them and said, "Gentlemen, it's good to meet you. How can I help you?" They said, "We are having lots of difficulties in running as an organization. If you can give us a bit of money." And he said, "So all you need is money?" And they said, "Yes." And he said, "Give them money." And as soon as they left, he called my friend and told him, "I'm very disappointed in your people. I had expected them to come here and talk to me about how they want to take over a country and run it." So he gave them the money. So we need to be able to go out there and be sure that we want to represent the people and speak the language of people who are serious about the business. And when I said we were not nice to them, it's because when you I shouldn't talk about that, but we need our leaders to be able to represent us. They cannot be seen to be beggars. They need to be the government. And nobody respects a beggar. What they will do the most is be polite, and this is from the part of the United Nations, it's from everybody, government. The moment you walk in, they are looking at you, they listen to you politely. By the time you finish, they're like, "Thank you very much." They shake your hand. As you leave, they slam the door. That's the end. So you need to be able to walk in there and they're feeling like, after you've left, they're thinking like, "Wow, these guys they just said something we need to think about." And as a result, we push them to think about having standing diplomatic presence. What has been happening a lot is that our people have done a lot of work, but out of very little resources, and very often many of them out of their pocket, having to travel to go for these meetings to present us. They've been fighting alone. They've been fighting a lone battle for a long time. Now, I met this team in 2004 for the first time in the Gambia, where they had gone to plead the case with SCACUF. And once again, I could tell that they had lots of limitations, and I didn't have a lot of experience. That tells you that with very little experience, I could already poke holes in what they were trying to do. And I think over time, we have grown as a people. But one of the weaknesses remains the fact that we are doing hit and run diplomacy. It doesn't work. You go to a country, you meet with the government, you talk to them for 2 hours, you leave, they forget you. But when you establish a presence and you knock on their door on a daily basis, sooner or later they'll give you what you want us to get rid of you. And that's what we are not doing. So we need to maintain a standing presence. We need to have a standing presence. Now, we also push them to be able to come up with what are their holy and unholy alliances. You're talking to friends, but who are the who are the enemies of your enemies, who are not necessarily your friends, but with whom you share the same interests. There's anybody who's against the regime, but it's not necessarily my friend. But I know that through that enemy of the regime, I can gain something. We need to start talking. And a lot of that was not coming out, but I think we have it, we know it. It's just that we don't know how to pull this out. And that's how part of what we've been doing is beginning to talk to some of those governments which we feel may not necessarily be on our side, but we know that they share the same enemy. I was in the Cote d'Ivoire about 2 or 3 weeks ago to talk to the Ivorian on the ground, because we know that they share a common, if it's not common interest, they share a common grievance with us. We need to start doing that and start building that kind of alliance that will yield fruits moving forward. And then mapping out our work. This is very important, because again, there is a drive, there is a strong drive for us to put in place a leadership and a government. That is important, and we need to do that, and it's urgent. But we cannot put in place a top-bottom structure, because very often it crumbles. When you start from the roof, you won't make it. In order for us to be able to put this thing in a manner that works, we need to start identifying who are our experts. What is our work? When we say we want to run the country, what are we worth as a country? I learned at primary school that the 1994 could generate power for the whole of West Africa. Is that true? Have we done our own feasibility to the point where we know we can go out there and negotiate? There were people who were calling at the time and saying, listen, we can negotiate. But Gambia has just kicked out its president who had emptied the coffers of the state, and this is a country that needs oil. So should we go to them and negotiate based on the oil we have? But how much oil do we have? Do we know? So when we talk about leadership, leadership is not just the people who want to sit in political positions. It's about talking to those technocrats and experts who can lead us and guide us in terms of what our work is. Now, when you start talking that, then you're beginning to talk about where we are going. And then, of course, what's the name? Like I've told you, it's an ugly name. And we are still debating. Yesterday, all these days, we are still debating what name we want to achieve. I'm probably the only one who is not so keen on what name, because whatever name you call me, I answer, as long as I get what I want. But people still think that the name is important, and when they decided then, as a result, to craft SCACUF, it was a funny incident, because this came out of something that we hadn't anticipated. When we convened the leaders, we were not anticipating that they would want to come up with an umbrella structure or an umbrella name. All we were hoping for was that they would agree first to sit around the table. Now remember that these are often gentlemen who distrust each other, who have worked for 20 years. They don't like each other. If I walk into the room, you walk out. If I sit on this side of the table, you sit on the other side. So we were not being too ambitious about what we were going to achieve. We were thinking, if we were able to just get them to sit around the table, agree to a game plan, then we've achieved a lot. But we were surprised when we walked in after lunch, and they were already sitting with a whiteboard, and they already had about 4 or 5 names, and they were debating, and they were debating and arguing. So like, what's happening? They're like, no, you cannot have Southern Cameroons without Ambazonia, but let's keep Ambazonia, and back and forth. And eventually they agreed to, and then the consortium stepped up and said that you cannot have it without the consortium. Then they eventually said, okay, let's include, and they're like, this doesn't make sense. It's not, and they're like, it's not your job. You brought us to talk, we are talking, we've talked, we've agreed. This is the name we are adopting. So we adopted it just like that. And finally, the gender and intergenerational balance. As you may know, these past few months, the past 6 months or so, have revealed to us a lot. It's revealed to us our strength as a people. For once, this regime has seen the people who have stood up as one man and taken a position. But out of this, it has also brought out a lot. It has brought out a lot of our leaders who were beginning to be old and beginning to despair. Like I was telling the colleagues the other day, when I saw this gentleman whom I've never seen in my life, when they arrived, we were just talking to ourselves now, like, you know, we are very fortunate that this happened now, because it gave us the opportunity to bring them into one room, to meet them, and for them at least to sit together and start talking. And we were telling ourselves, If this time next year all of them are still alive, then we are extremely lucky because they are old and they are frail and they were beginning to give up. Now, this has happened at the time when most of them are still alive. We are blessed. We have a second generation, in my opinion, of leaders. A second generation of leaders who have been in the struggle for a long time, have sacrificed, have made a lot, have contributed a lot, whom we need to recognize. This is the likes of Dr. Ebenezer Kwanga, Joe Ayaba, and so on, and that whole generation. They, all of a sudden, they are beginning to find their place in leadership. They're beginning to find their place in terms of decision making and moving forward. And we need to give them that. But we shouldn't forget, and of course the likes of Warhead and so on, but we shouldn't forget that there is another generation that's coming up who took this revolution by the horns and they played their part. Regardless of the part, we need to give it to them and we need to continue to respect them for what they did. The likes of Mark Barretta, the likes of Iro Tapan, and that whole generation. Regardless of what we are saying, they made a contribution. Now, we think once we start to talk about leadership and moving forward, we need to look at the role and the place of all these people. It cannot continue to be a whole gap. It cannot be just moving from one generation and then we let them die and go on to the next. It has to be a mix of intergenerations. This was really debated and they were. Based on that, we then took them through what we thought was their organizational options. Remember, and I think this came up yesterday, where and I've been asked this question a number of times. We have been telling them that for you to move forward and based on where we are, we need to consider a number of options. Option number one, we are legally recognized organizations inside the country. As it stands, everything we stand for is in exile. So this option is now excluded. It's out, the consortium is out, so there is nothing at all. Two, it's the underground organizations in and out of the country. This is a lot more of what's happening now. We are operating underground, both within and without. But there is also the organization internationally. The second two are where we are. The middle one is very important, but we know also that it's weakening. The people cannot continue to hold. The ghost towns are weakening. Now the diaspora has got an important role to play, and that is why a conference such as this is extremely important. We may be late for the meetings, we may fight, but it is extremely important that it has happened. So whatever happens, we need to continue to salute you and thank you. So based on the above, so after having taken them through all of this, we then said we need to go back and redefine the problem. We need to, who exactly is our enemy? What are we fighting against? Because we spent a lot of time fighting around the name that we want, we've been fighting around the leadership that we want, we've been fighting, but we haven't actually invested the time we should fighting against the real enemy, which is the regime and the government that the regime represents. So let's go back to the problem. If we focus on the problem and we defeat the problem, we'll have enough time to fight against each other. And there is a lot of it left after we are done. We need to redefine our strategic objectives. We need to be clear about what we want. It is still debated, it's still being debated, it's still debatable. There are those who are saying we want to restore. There are those who want independence. And I don't think we'll be able to define clearly what we want. It's normal and it's okay to be confused, but more and more we need to be having a unity of purpose as to where we want to go and how we want to achieve it. And that becomes an important part of what we're doing. And also, then we need to define the means of getting what we want. We know what we want, but how do we achieve it? Now, this is where we start to get the divergence. In the room, there are those who thought we've got a very strong, in fact, the cases, there were two ways of describing it. There were those who said we've got a winnable case, and others who said we've got a watertight case, legally. And I remember driving off to go see Professor Anangwe. We had gone to try and convince him to be the facilitator of this whole thing, which he had turned down because he felt he wasn't the most qualified person. And he felt the most qualified person to do it would be Cardinal Tumi, who of course was not willing to come. So when these leaders all converged, sat in the room, and myself and my team then stood up to do the facilitation. I think for like half the day, they were a bit apprehensive about our ability and even our qualifications to do it. But at the end of the day, it wasn't so much about qualification. I think it was about the zeal and the passion and the belief that we want to achieve something. At the end of it, we were all successful. But the point I wanted to make was with regards to the different cases or the different approaches. Professor Anyangwe and others believe very strongly that the legal approach is the approach. But in the same room, there were others, younger people who were like, we're sorry, your approach, you've carried this on for a long time, it has not yielded fruit, we need to look at other options. And others who felt community mobilization, civil disobedience is the answer. Based on that, we felt that there is no need to exclude any one option. All the options are valid. We just need to find a way of marrying these different options and making sure that they work all towards achieving the same goal. And of course, we need to redefine the solution. By redefining the solution, there are a number of things. Like I said, we need to narrow down the enemy. Now, in that same conflict, there were, and that's why I said women, sometimes we underestimate the role of our women. There were women sitting in that conflict who were saying, we don't care what you're saying, you need to go to the other side of the border and start taking some lives, indiscriminately. We don't care, just go there and carry out some action. There were others who felt, no, let's try and be selective in terms of how we do it. We felt that we couldn't just let this be a conversation where everyone tries it in any direction. We need to know that the regime has been doing its very best to provoke us to the point where we go out and make mistakes. They want us to go out there and carry out one indiscriminate act so they can use it as an excuse to decimate our population. So far, we've beaten them at this game because that has not happened. That's number one. Number two, in terms of broadening the circle of friends, is that let's not go out there and make unnecessary enemies. If somebody has not done anything to you, don't go attacking them. Especially if that person is sharing a common enemy with you. Whether we like it or not, we have our friends on the other side, east of the Mungo, who are they also have grievances against the regime. Our job should be to find a way for those people to rise up against that regime to our advantage, knowing what we want. So if we go out there and we antagonize the relationship we have with them, we are only broadening our circle of enemies. It doesn't help us. So let's broaden our circle of friends and narrow down our circle of enemies. Who is our enemy? It's the regime. Within this regime, there are some of our own people. We need to be able to identify them and go for them. That's why when I met with Dr. Chuck Ayaba, I told him I buy into his rhetoric of what he calls it surgical operations. You're not just going there and doing whatever. You're being very surgical in terms of what you're doing. For me, that makes a lot of sense. Anything going out there doing indiscriminately, you're giving credence to those who call us terrorists. And we are not terrorists. We are people who know what we want. And that is why, even in terms of broadening our circle of friends, we are now going even beyond the borders and beginning to talk to a lot of different actors. We are talking to the Biafra. Interestingly, when we met, there is a group from Eastern Nigeria who came into the meeting and did a presentation out of the group and said, we've been watching you for a long time, we've been feeling sorry for you as a people, we've mobilized resources, we've been waiting, but you cannot cry more than the bereaved. We are just waiting for the moment when you will say, when you will take up your own issues and start fighting, and then we'll follow you. So we've got lots of friends who are sitting out there. They're just waiting for us to take the step. And of course, we need to sharpen our war tools. When we talk about sharpen our war tools, what have we done so far? We've been able to put together a solid, or should I call it solidarity as a people with so much solidarity that the regime has failed to break it. That's a tool of war. One of them has been the social media. Generally, we've done impossible things with the social media. And for once, we are beginning to we've put ourselves on the map as one of the few people in the world who have been discriminated based on the social media. I was in at the University of Sussex a few days ago, and there are young men who are now beginning. And it's interesting because when they sent me, strangely enough, these are people who have got nothing to do with us, Malawians, and they contacted me out of the blue to say, whenever we have any demonstration, any big issues, they want to join because they are very interested in our cause. And eventually, when we met with them and spoke to them, I met with them and spoke to them, I realized that something was happening. These young people are actually studying their masters in something called IT, it's legal IT law, the law on IT. And our case is what they now want to start focusing their master's thesis on. That tells you that we are beginning to, there's impact, we're making impact here and there in different pockets that we don't see very often. And we need to continue to sharpen those tools, and we need to use them. Now, the structure, this is very important because it has come up. If you bear with me, I know that I'm running out of time. If you would bear with me, the structure is extremely important because even talking to a whole lot of our brothers and our compatriots, and even yesterday, a lot of people were talking about the need to have a government, the need to have in place, a prime minister and so on. And the argument we are putting is that that is already in place. We may want to call it whatever. We could change all these names, but the important thing is that we've got something. Now, the advisory council, there was a long debate, and in fact, it came up again when Mr. Fongalamfo sent a message this morning to say he wants us to revise this structure. But his worry is the word advisory. They, as the leaders and the frontline leaders, they were pushing for the word governing council because that gives them more powers. The younger generation were against that, and they pushed for an advisory council. And I'm going to explain this to you. The idea of the advisory council input and what our thinking was when we conceived this for them was that we have leaders who have invested their lives and sacrificed a lot for our cause. Now we're beginning to say they are redundant. They are not part of the Android generation. They can't do the things that we do. And we think the leadership now needs to change hands, which is true to an extent, but at the same time we cannot neglect what these gentlemen have played. These are people who have conscientized us. They opened our eyes at the time we were blind. As a result, if we want to move forward, we must give them their place in posterity. As a result, we said, we are going to create the advisory council, which will have all the frontline leaders sitting there. They will continue to play a role, a political and diplomatic role. We are going out to go and carry out, meet with the government. You know that a number of meetings have taken place with a number of governments here and there, which are being rumored. Some of them are rumors, but many of them are true. Now, if we are going to go meet with some government, we could take some of the people who are super brilliant lawyers and engineers and everything. Very often they want to see with a defined figure. Somebody who knows the history. Somebody who was there when these things were happening. These guys, they constitute our institution. So when we go there, we need to take them because they are nobody can articulate our issues better than them. So we felt they will continue to play that kind of role. The role of representing us politically, diplomatically, when necessary. However, we also need to recognize that they have certain shortcomings. In a world and a time when you need to be, it's a Twitter age, you need to be moving with the times, and they are not in a position to do that. So we need an organ that will be able to run things on a day-to-day basis, so kind of the operational arm. And that's how we came up with the idea of the Secretariat. Now the Secretariat is basically, we argue for 4, in fact at the time, 3 positions, 3 full-time positions, which will include an executive secretary. Actually, it's not executive, it's Secretary General. We had proposed an executive secretary, and they refused. They said an executive secretary means he's going to have all the powers, and we want to be able to control the powers of this individual. So they went for a Secretary General, who will report to the Advisory Council, but will run the Secretariat. And out of that, you will have other positions which are fully paid. Now, we were pushing for fully paid positions because whether you like it or not, you've been having individuals who have been taking our struggle and running it on a part-time basis. You could be a professor, you could be the best mind we have, but if you're only taking this thing from time to time, and you have a bit of time to take it, you're not not going to go anywhere. So we need somebody who breathes, eats, sleeps the struggle. And that's why we thought we need to have individuals who are playing that role. They will be running a secretariat, running a staff, and we are going to pay them. But we also spoke about having diplomatic presence. One extra position became the position of the finance. In fact, all of this is wrong. I put it wrong. It was the Secretary General, is the Administrative Secretary, the Finance Secretary. Those are the three positions. So I put it wrong. And then the fourth position is the position of the spokesperson. And the discussion around the spokesperson then was that we may have a brilliant Secretary General who understands the political game, who plays the game, but he's not necessarily the most vocal, the most articulate person. We may be needing somebody who goes out there and is able to articulate our issues. Maybe with a minimal legal background so that when they talk, they know what are the implications of what they're saying. So that was kind of the thinking around having a spokesperson. And finally, having a diplomatic presence. Now, I've spoken about the diplomatic presence, and by this, I'm saying we cannot afford to continue to have people leave their jobs in a long while to go on a trip and go spend a week and then go back home. So, and based on what we've been hearing, most of you may know, we've been told severally that if we want our cause to be recognized, we need to be able to get some members of the African Union to start putting the people on the table. Now, if we want to do that, we need somebody who will be taking them out for coffee every now and then on a continuous basis. And so we argue that we want to have at least one presence in Addis Ababa, somebody who will be talking to all the ambassadors of the AU and beginning to push our case. That's how we begin to get the kind of leverage that we want. So that's another full-time and fully paid position that we introduced and which they bought into. And then, of course, we then thought the organs which will be represented in countries but also regionally need to be introduced. There were lots of arguments. Some thought we should only have these organs. No, there are the organs and then the countries. So talk about the organs. Now, what are the organs? There is the diplomatic, the legal, the fundraising, the communications, mass mobilization, the strategic think tank, and there are a couple of others on the other slide. But let me talk to them quickly. I've just spoken about the diplomatic. Each frontline movement will, before we move on, each frontline movement will send a representative to one of these organs. So if we have 5 or 7, I think there are about 7 frontline movements which have been identified, each frontline movement is going to send one person here and one person here. So we'll be having 7 people in all of them. Now, what that does is that instead of having a leadership where you have 3 or 5 individuals who take the decisions for everybody and their lawyers and their engineers and everything, we want to make sure that our people are beginning to find ownership in the process by getting them in all of this. So they will identify individuals and will put in all of this. That way there is representation, both in terms of the movement, but also in terms of expertise. I know that there is something on gender. There is something on gender, and there is also something on community mobilization, or mass mobilization, but I don't think all of them are reflected. We can ask questions later. This is extremely important. Initially, the idea was that if we only have focus on what is happening in the diaspora, there is a very strong possibility that we may lose what is happening at home. So one of the organs was to look at what kind of support to give to the home front, which is, talk about the people who are in jail, the sustainability of the revolution, and those in exile. And of course, what to do if the regime reaches out for dialogue. Now, you may know that we've got lots of our compatriots, most of them who are members of the consortium, who ran into exile when they were being chased by the regime. Many of them had to live without anything, with just the clothes on their back. And when I met them, they were recounting, if you need to meet them, listen to them, recount their stories. Those who ran away at the last minute and had to walk through bushes to go, sometimes it makes you want to cry. But many of them are now in exile on the other side, and they are going through hell. Many don't have houses, they're lodging here and there. So what we've been doing so far, at least from a South African perspective, is beginning to rent accommodation. We're trying to pay for houses for it, like pay the contract for a year. Then we know that for 1 year, they don't need to deal with issues of housing. But it's not enough. And I think this is one of my appeals, that we all must try and make sure that we start contributing to such initiatives. However, Mark is here. I didn't realize. How are you? Okay, now. Now, in order for us to get this going, we need to coordinate our efforts. Everybody has been giving. It is important that we coordinate so that we do not duplicate efforts, and it's happening already. But many of them are suffering, and I keep saying these are respected lawyers, people who had their own practice, who are now sitting in the streets of Nigeria not having anything to eat. And as you may know, we even have female colleagues who have crossed the border leaving behind children as young as 7 months old. So there is a lot that we have to do. We also know that, for instance, for us to sustain the revolution, we need to also think about the home front. There are people who are in hiding, many of them we know, who are in hiding at home, but also those who are taking some very, very risky moves on our behalf. I'm not going to elaborate on those risks because I'm supposed not to know, but there is a lot that these guys are doing, and we need to find a way to sustain that. And finally, the one thing that we felt was important in terms of leadership was that whether we like it or not, by now we should know how the regime operates. Sooner or later, as we begin to push them against the wall, they're going to reach out and say, okay, let's talk. But we want to make sure that when the time comes for that kind of talk, we know exactly what conditions we are putting on the table. We cannot let 1961 repeat itself. So when we go to the table, we should be the one putting a document on the table and say, let's discuss our document, not the other way around. And for that reason, we need to be prepared. Marcellus. Oh, I mentioned the organs, but these are the organs that we have put in place. The strategy organ is basically an organ of individuals who are very faceless, people whom you're supposed not to know or see, but who are doing a lot of work in the background, and a whole lot of other organs. And we are hoping that each movement will contribute people within these organs globally. However, the country offices and the regional offices, which is what I was then proposing, to Belgium, is that one, think about, instead of saying what political and diplomatic organ you give it to one country, think about one person per country being in each and every organ. That way we are not losing our skills. The people with skills and experience will find themselves part of this in each and every country. And then leaders can come out of each organ. Regional offices is basically to have one or two individuals who will coordinate countries at continental level. So for Europe, like we're already trying to do, maybe we have 1 or 2 individuals. And Africa, Asia, I think we have selected Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Americas, if I'm not mistaken. And then once again, in all of this, just to talk about it, I know that we had certain discussions. For you to have a country office, you must have a membership of at least 100 people. If you've got less than 100 people, you cannot qualify for the country office because we are expected to make financial contributions to run this. So if you have less people, the burden on you will be too much. So we're going for more people, 100 or more, in order to make the burden less on the people. I'm almost done. I know. I know. And so moving forward, I think this is it. That's the last one. Moving forward, for the second component that we are hoping to achieve moving forward is to cement unity among the leaders. I think this was discussed yesterday. But at the same time, the message needs to go out very in as much as it is important that we bring everybody together and we move together. We cannot allow certain individuals to hold us back. We are moving. The train is moving. Who is behind will have to jump in and go with us. But we have to move. the registration of the legal entity is a challenge, and at the moment there are lots of debates, but I think this is something that needs to go to Europe. Think about, I know that Singa is Southern Cameroonians in Nigeria. They are pushing for the global headquarters to be in Abuja, beyond Korea, outside of Korea. But we also need to look at other countries and see if they can find a way to get this entity to be legally recognized, because then, and again, we want some kind of separation of powers. Be it registered here, but have a bank account there, just so there is accountability and we have in place accountability structures. And to identify the unseen soldiers and recruit them. This is important. There are lots of people who are making contributions and they are not seen. They don't want to be seen. These are our compatriots who are probably working for international organizations or doing work that does not allow them to come out openly. And I know that some of us have been very critical of them and said, no, if you want to contribute, then everyone needs to see you. Let us not forget, on the other side, on the side of the enemy, we need people who will be giving us intelligence. So we need everybody on board, including those who are not seen. We just need to identify them and identify the role that they will play. And of course, finally, to have a bottom-up approach. If we want to make this thing work, let's do what we're already doing now. Start identifying the leaders at this level and gradually go upwards. My worry is the idea of starting from the top, getting a few individuals, and then 2 months down the line, it fizzles out. Or we get the same old individuals who have done the same old things, the same old way, and then we get the same old result. And finally, just to talk about the fundraising, which I didn't include, is the fact that we then put in place a model where we think every single one of our citizens can make a contribution of $20 a month. With $20 a month and only 10,000 people contributing globally, we will be able to raise 200,000 every month. That should be able to pay the salaries of these people I spoke about, be able to run our secretariat, and be able to run our radio and television, which we have already identified, and we are just waiting now for the funds in order for it to start running. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Milan, for that brilliant presentation. We are going to take some questions, but we are going to make said the opposite, and he did the contrary. He wants to take less time to discuss and take more time for questioning, but he has taken more time to explain, so he's going to take less time for questioning. Given that we have other speakers who are on the line, and that we have already wasted about 3.5 hours because we came late, and we have just limited time to the end of the day because we are going to shut down the building at a particular time. So please, we have only 10 minutes for questioning, and please direct your questions to Comrade Milan. And let's start with the lady. She was.
Can we ask the questions?
So let him be able to decide that how many questions he can take at a time before he gives answers, because we don't have the same.
Give her the mic. Give her the mic.
So Comrade Milan, 3-4 questions before you answer. So we'll take the first 4 questions. The answers, then we'll take another set of 4 questions. Please.
Give her the mic.
Hello everyone, my name is Erica. Mr. Milan, my question goes from your very first line. It says Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia Consortium United Front, and the first point on it here says adoption of a grand strategy for all movement. Now here is what I don't understand. Before I want to find out, Maurice, the movement for the independent restoration of Southern Cameroon, has this same objective as adopting a grand strategy for all movements. So why the repetition? Why do we have Maurice, who has adopted a grand strategy for all movement, and SCACUF, who is also adopting a grand strategy for all movement? You talked about mapping Maurice talked about a roadmap. They have a strategy as well. You guys have, from my perspective, you have the same plans and objective. Why this repetition? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question from behind her. Please, that's easy. Some people are still coming in.
It's going to be very short.
Yeah, a moment. Some people are still coming in. We please, for those sitting beside, please move in. So when somebody comes, everybody has to get up.
So, from Luxembourg. My question concerns the internet. What are we doing to ensure that we get internet to our people, even bypassing all these MTN and the rest?
Okay, thank you very much. We go to Comrade Elton. Once more reminder, please shift in, don't sit at the side and listen to the video, because the people are disturbing you time and again and distract the whole world.
Comrade Milan, you have made my day. I am not asking a question, but maybe to expound on a few things you said. On focus, you talk about identifying our engineers, economists, ITs, and so on. We should also identify our career diplomats. Who, for one reason or the other, may not be able to show their faces. There are some other Southern Cameroonians who have gone through ERIC on private sponsorship. They have the wherewithal of diplomacy, and we can spot them. And when we have this united front that represents every Southern Cameroonian, some areas could be mandated to carry out diplomatic missions in riverian countries. Let us take the case of Austin, for example. We don't have a diplomat amongst us. So when we meet this government, what do we say? What do we do? A sister was talking about walking across the southern Bavarian border. Yes. When such a coalition comes into play, we can take on Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovenia, Bulgaria, at cost and time-effective means. So we need to identify these guys and bring them to the fold. The second identification should be our IT. Those who are talking about self-defense. Let me tell you, these guys, when brought together, can bring a lot of pain to bear on this wicked regime, even without firing a shot. Cost effective. I don't want to elaborate on it here, but in strategic sessions, I will be very clear. In 1993, during the civil servant strike, apart from the Petit provinces, we stood up like one man and organized, and by the time the government realized that the Betis who were around the place where the strike was effective could not be able to chop and broke pot, they rushed to the bank and started paying us. We can cost paid without firing a shot.
Thank you very much. Next time for you. Okay, let's get Jojo.
Yeah.
Hello.
And that's your question to Ghana, please. Please, just a question directly. You don't have enough time.
I'm Alan Joe from Britain. My question is related to what the first sister asked. I'm asking in terms of unity, what are some of the groups that haven't joined SCACUF, and what are you people doing to bring them together?
Okay, thank you very much. I think Mina will respond to those 4 questions, then we'll take another set of 4.
Thank you. Let me begin from the last question, because it then links to the first one. Which groups have not yet joined SCACUF? And I'll start from the AGC. And by saying join, It's not that they haven't joined him. You must have seen some of the correspondence coming through from Dr. Che Ayaba. In principle, the AGC has been part and parcel of the SCACUF initiative right from the beginning. We spoke about it. In fact, he was very instrumental in giving me some ideas as I was putting together the concept. He was in Johannesburg. We met for coffee, we spoke, and I went to see him to seek his opinion, but also get advice from him, because I felt he understands this movement better than I do, and I have to acknowledge that he was very instrumental in shaping the thought of what we put together. That's one. They haven't signed for a whole lot of reasons, and partly we discussed yesterday, but remember that what the AGC stands for, we need to be very careful about how we craft it into this. The second thing was that he wanted to see certain elements reflected in the document. It was raised yesterday, and in fact, he sent his contribution in writing. The person who brought it to me, I don't know, but kind of recrafted the message, and it didn't read exactly the way Church wanted it. And when I realized that he had played with the words, I decided to take the whole thing out. For one reason, the people who sat around the table had decided on what their resolutions are. Now, when you go and you change it to suit a particular agenda, there is something wrong. While I was more than happy to include his, I felt that a member of my team had not been very, how can I put it? Yes, a member of my team was not reflecting what he wanted. And I called him on the phone and told him, I am not going to reflect your contributions now because I think it was misrepresented. However, there will be a second opportunity, and I strongly suggest you're there yourself to ensure that it's reflected the way you want with you being there. He was happy with that, and I think that's the reason he's happy with it to this day. Dr. Akwanga did mention yesterday in terms of the Youth League, the reasons why well, he said there were some reasons. Those reasons have been sent through in writing. We have acknowledged them, and I think all of them are going to be addressed by the second conclave. So that's the second group. And I think that's the only group, the only two groups which have not joined. There were discussions as to whether or not Maurice had joined, which now relates to your question. Maurice endorsed the resolution of SCACUF. Of course, it did it late as a result of a whole lot of issues. The person who was appointed to represent Maurice at the conclave, at the last minute called me and said he couldn't make it because he was going on a diplomatic mission. As a result, he wasn't able to come, but Bo Herbert stayed with me on the phone until the last day. He sent a lot of his contributions. We reflected as much of it as we could, and eventually he signed the document and sent his signature. But like I said, he still had some misgivings with regards to the way the whole thing was framed. We do not want to publish that, and we think it's important that we invite him to the second conclave so that he can explain that to all the leaders sitting there, not just to me or to a couple of individuals. Which then relates to the first question. Why has the strategy or the initiative been, why are we duplicating initiative? I have to say, quite frankly, and like I said initially, I was one of the people who was not paying much attention to what was happening when this thing started. Firstly, because I thought this thing is going to fizzle out very quickly. I had heard about Maurice in passing, but I didn't pay much attention. However, I have also explained that what pushed us to get involved was the negotiations and the discussions between the consortium leaders and the regime. And so our point of entry was more to see how we could help those people who were negotiating with government. And gradually, it kind of mutated into something else. And as soon as we realized that there was a mutation, one of the first people we contacted was Maurice, or at least Mr. Bo, to say, this is what's happening, this is the initiative. He bought into it right from the very beginning, and I think that has been the position until now. Has it been a duplication? Again, we sit in different parts of the world, and we conceive ideas. The difference is putting those ideas into practice. But we all have good ideas, I think. In terms of the internet, I made mention that I was in the Côte d'Ivoire 3 weeks ago. I can't see the colleague here, but one of the colleagues had contacted me and linked me up with somebody. We've been talking to a lot of actors to see how best we can bring the internet. I already have a submission of a proposal for the internet to be installed. There's a whole lot of things, but we need money. Not only do we, and I think money is something we can raise within a week or two. The biggest problem is how to get this equipment into the territory and make it work. So we are stuck. in terms of the technical expertise, which then goes to the next one. We are pleading and begging for the people who have got the technical expertise to step up and say, listen, I need this much, I'm going to deliver. Then we're going to mobilize the money, pay you so you can go in there and install this thing and let it work for us. This for me has begun to x-ray our shortcoming as a people, and that's why I'm saying when we say we want to build a nation, we need to be able to tell exactly what we have. So far, there are areas of gaps that we haven't been able to identify amongst our people, which means we have to go to other people to get it. But how much do we trust those other people? There are companies which are sending us big amounts to pay, and we are not very sure, but I can tell you that there are plans that have been submitted, amounts, we can raise the money, we need the expertise, and the people who can cross the border and make it work. And that is why, while we're waiting for the internet to be installed, we are now looking at putting in place a radio television station, at least a channel on a station using satellite, which those who have got access to satellite dishes will be able to access it. It's going to cost us about $9 every month to pay for it, but I think that is worth it. If we are able to contribute $20 each across the world, we can easily make it work. And then you also mentioned the identification of career diplomats. I basically just talked to a few that I could come up with, but yes, we need to identify every single person who has got skills, because we're going to need the skills. Hydrologists, meteorologists, everything, we're going to need them moving forward. And I think I've answered all the questions, I hope.
Yes, the second set of questions, please. I'll start from Mr. Talanto.
Be careful. That's the guy.
This is.
I mean the guy that was going around with the mic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milan. Comrade Milan. We listened to you, a beautiful presentation. And as our parents say, every man brags about his manhood, no matter how small it is. We have listened to the same presentations over the years. Lots of them from SCNC, SCACUF, and so on. Our fear now is that this is dragging on too much. So I was expecting maybe your program to give us something of a time frame, what we expect at particular times, to let all of us be expectant of the future. The fear is we may be donating money now, but for how long are we going to do this? There's soon going to be donor fatigue, and things may crumble. The sacrifices people are offering at home, our parents who are going jobless, our children who aren't going to school, we are not sure they can support this for the next 2 years. So we think it's of utmost importance to tell us what we're expecting, and if things don't happen at that time, is there a plan B somewhere for us to move on to? So that's just a question. Thanks very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much. We'll take the next question from Pam. Sorry about that. I don't know his name, please.
Thank you very much. I'm a very tired Benisa from Mamoki village in the division, but from Villa. I'm sorry. Comrade Milan, hello.
Maybe we'll listen to the phone.
So,
Continue with your
okay. My question comes. Our people are down there. They're working hard to withstand this fight. We are here also fighting it out. But we have time. For us it's time because of school time, as you earlier said. Goldstand is giving us a big fight winning. But do you think from now till September, which we have, the proposal that you have given to us will work? Secondly, if I heard it very well, you said the defense force, let me put it that way. Maybe they are going to use it in a different manner which will not be diplomatic. I know fight is not diplomatic as we may put it, But you don't think that our people need to see the action you and me are talking about? They want to see the practical part of that action. Let's see what the defense force can do. Please, let us give chance to everybody, as you said. Those who are pushing this in a different way, let them push it. Please, I want you to give us that guarantee. If September will be the best time for us to say, our people don't go home or stay at home because we are prepared to fight. Please, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Please, I wish to plead that we're going to suspend a set of questions because we have succeeded to get internet connections. We'll take Tassan's presentation for 10 minutes. Comrade Milan has written your questions. He's going to answer them later on. Please, we're going to come back to session. He's going to complete sessions to answer those questions. Those questions, just jot those questions down. You can ask them. Please, we have succeeded to get internet connections now, and they may go out very soon because it's not in Europe. So let's take Comrade Tassan's presentation, and then we'll move from there. Thank you very much.
Afternoon to the entire Europe. I'm happy to see that we have a full who are some of the leaders in the house who I could salute them. I know that I don't know there. I send greetings to Comrade Miller from South Africa. I know that my big brother whoever is inside, I send special greetings to looking for all the efforts. I know that Comrade Joe Ayama should be there, so I send him greetings as well, and to all the leaders in all the countries in Europe who are gathered. I can see that we have a full house, and that Europe has taken the struggle most seriously. How I wish that these images will reach the authorities in La République so that they see that our people mean business. That said, it's a privilege for us of this generation. It's a great privilege given us by God that we should be the ones to steer the ship that will lead our people to the land of freedom, the land of promise, and the land of glory. I want to point out to the European Conference, to the Belgian Conference, that the English version of the Creed of La République says land of promise, land of glory. And that for 56 years we have not seen the promise, and we have not seen the...
I don't know. Which one do you have? You have from where? France. I'm using my internet in France.
We have the assignment to take our people to that land that God promised our people.
Go to setting.
The promise that we shall see the promise and the glory.
It's supposed to go. It's on. It's on. It's okay. It's supposed to go.
The promise, not only the promise of God, and the glory shall be His glory. But in that land, we shall have all that we need, because God gives me.
I'm not getting it.
There are some things that we do, but we will not announce them. Because the element of surprise is always the key in struggles like this one. I don't want to let you know that I know that you is understanding. I just want you to know that we have agents of Labour in that meeting. And to those agents of Labour who have come to listen to us, and to take it back home. Take it back home to your masters and tell them that we are unstoppable. We have fought for 56 years and we have won it. It is because it was not yet.
The baby was not ready to come out.
Our struggle before us, who saw it all many years ago, and he was crying, his voice was the voice. Your children have come to join you and to get home. I want to salute the chairman of the SCNC and all the other chairmen of the SCNC before him. I joined the children. I greet back for that they have been ahead of us. We did not follow them. Not because what they were doing was wrong, but because it was not yet God's time. Now it is God's time, and we have come. Nothing in the world is us. So we want to encourage you that as you can make sure that the outcome of the Belgian conference is unity of Southern Cameroon. At the end of this conference, we will speak with one purpose. The purpose is the train that is taking us back home. Publish all the differences and begin to publish them so by the time that we meet in SCACUF in a couple of days, we will continue on the good work that you would have put on the ground for us. We should not put the cart before the horse, but there is time for everything. And when the time will come for each stage of the struggle, we shall go there, we shall embrace it. We want to encourage Europe. It is Europe that colonized Africa. And it is from Europe that our liberation may come. That is what God wants. But no, that we hold the aces. It is what we will decide that Europe will do. And therefore, I have this special appeal as an educationist to make to Europe. At the end of your conference, Europe should schedule a day. The Belgian conference should schedule a date that the entire Europe will converge on Paris, France, at the headquarters of UNESCO to defy UNESCO's silence in this matter. Our children are being forced to work by 1,000 means price examination for don't leave it. So the next big planning that before it takes Paris, France in front of UNESCO and the Belgian conference to schedule a date. Let Paris, France, which is the star oppressor, know that they are ready to go. I want here to greet you and to encourage you that the generations, God be with you, guide you, and lead you. God bless you. God bless you, Lord.
Thank you very much, Comrade Gassan. We are sorry for the poor connections. I don't know if you really want to take one or two questions before you go. Are you available for two questions?
It's all right. Let's do it 4-5.
Okay, please. Given that we don't have the pleasure of time, we'll take about 4 questions. 2 at a time, given that you have bad connections. Please summarize your question. Connection.
Okay. It's not really a question. It's a proposal. By the way, my name is G. I'm from Germany.
No, please, without time, without
Yeah, I said, my name is Nji, I'm from Germany. I'm one of the Southern Cameroonians that were being detained on the 1st of October 2011. We had a mass trial in Boya. I think it is high time we stop all this talking and no action, because I believe in action. And action is what I want to see. Because, yeah, what I'm coming, please. Yeah, he's listening to what I'm saying. And I believe it is time for us to take the bull by the horn. Because if we just sit, fold our arms, and keep watching our Republic doing what they are doing to our fellow brothers and sisters back at home, and no action is being taken, by the time they start feeling the same pain we are going through, then this whole game is going to take a different direction. I think this is just my suggestion. And we have to take this seriously. I mean, I did not just drive down to Brussels for child's play. People don't know me. I don't want people to know me because I can even act as an individual. But I am not here. I'm not hiding myself. I'm not hiding my identity. I mean, this is what I believe in, and this is what I stand for. I'm a father of two. And we don't just sit and say, oh, who will go for, I mean, we have families and we don't want to die. I mean, someday, somehow, we are all going to die.
Amen.
It depends on what we die fighting for. I know there were people back at home watching me because they know me very well. My popular name was Omega, and I'm still giving it out. People know me because I used to say, I would rather take the bullet from in front and die as a hero than struggling to run and take from behind and die like a coward. So I think it's high time to stop this problem and take action. Thank you.
Thank you very much for letting me please, let's use the mic again, because listen here. So please, we'll send the mic that way. Shiva, please, can you help us? Please come and Eric for
Just look familiar.
Mid farm or water.
Gardens.
Gardens.
Eric from.
Sir, I have a question.
No. Come on, Eric from, please.
Paris.
Okay, my name is Tak Martin. I am from Amsterdam. I like your presentation, but there's something I missed.
We are asking questions to Kamalisa.
Please, or to Tasa.
Yes. Can I give the microphone?
Please, for Tasa, then
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please come and Eric, a question again.
My name is Eric from Germany. Now that Mark is here and Tassan is there, can they tell us something about this power tussle in the consortium? Because it is adversely affecting the struggle. Thank you very much.
Did you get their questions? Yeah, did you get their questions? 2 questions.
Okay, all right. I did the first 2 questions. The first 2 ones.
Yeah, did you get them?
Yes, I think I got them.
Okay, thank you.
The first one, the first worry came from somebody, so I didn't retain his name, who said it is time for action. I don't know what kind of action he is talking about. I agree with you that it is time for action. Action is going on. But I want to caution that understand the kind of action we're talking about, then I will appeal for caution. If I were to be a gun-carrying rebel leader, I would proceed like Kabila. I will not announce to the people and to my enemy, to those I am saying that I have bought guns and this and that, things that are going on. I will not announce to them. I will prepare diligently, train my voice diligently with nobody knowing, and invade the land and take over. When people on social media brandishing rifles get the enemy to prepare, and the enemy is ready. Even when we are not going to assault, they are going to deploy their troops, block all avenues by which we used to enter. Don't announce war on social media. It's not done. It's not this kind of war. If that is the approach you want to take, so we need to tread carefully, my brothers and sisters. The Constitution and the accurate practice of voting, I want to assure you that the Constitution does not actually operate on social media, not on the ground in Cameroon. In social media for this advocacy, you will equally agree with us that the social media as it is now is contributing very less significantly to the struggle that was before. The consortium is made up of trade unions, professional trade unions and associations. Those members put together for little drug owners who have done a wonderful job in the past and referred to Mark and I for retain information and mobilizing our people. I think that they are still doing a good job. Can do a much more better job if they rally behind leaders. Our goals are not short, that's why we are seeking it, bringing together individuals and groups. Now, before that, we are strong, we are putting our expectations on the ground. We need to get together soonest so that we can accelerate the process. Not worry about the consulting media. But note that in a struggle like this, there will be differences. Not that we are busy of business, so we will make room for little differences. And we try to argue them. Some may be stubborn, some may be gentle, but we should make room for them. And know that we are individuals. We are from different backgrounds. We have different ambitions, different purposes, different issues. But for now, our one and only vision and purpose should be to get the restoration of our state. And we are calling on each and every one to help. Not for vision, total and outright restoration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Tessa. We'll take 2 more questions and it's going to be off because we have others just come in. Please.
Yeah, hello, Southern Cameroonians. My name is Robert Amanji. I'm the technical advisor of NCDC in the UK, at the same time the vice chairman of Morris UK. My question goes to Comrade Tassa. I've been in touch with Mpamfo, who is the chairman, the national chairman of the NCSC. And, I want to find out, he is equally in Nigeria, if you are in communication with him. And I've also been in touch with our very powerful Honorable Weber. So I want to know if you guys are working as a team or you're working individually, because we are at a point where unity and harmony is very crucial at this struggle. So can you tell us, because it seems to be as if there's some loophole thing here. Thank you very much.
My name is Victor. I'm from Belgium. I want to ask a question to Mr. Tassamini Fred. It concerns the issue of leadership.
because I watched the video he put out releasing the intent consortium of the duty, but I was puzzled in the manner in which the video was done. I thought as a leader, they were supposed to have an abstract conversation with the internal leader before the video is put out. Both of them agreed. So when the video came out, that's what brought all this problem. So can you say why the video was released in that manner without having a brief conversation with the internal leader?
Let me get this.
I'm sorry, that was the last question. We don't have enough time. So please, Comrade Tazan. Out. Comrade Tazan, please, we want to plead with you to guide your response. You have the right to refuse to answer a question or to answer it as you will. Please, answer the two questions that have been asked you.
I got the question on the video. What was the first question for this last one?
Yeah, Comrade Hassan, I repeat again. My name is Robert Tangi, and the question goes to the fact that I've been speaking with the national chairman. He is equally in Nigeria. Do you talk with him? Are you guys working in collaboration? At the same time, are you equally working in collaboration with Honorable Weber? Because these are pillars of this struggle. Because it has come to a point where we have to work together as a team. This is very crucial. So this is my question. Are you in collaboration with them? Are you working together with them? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just respond to the question.
Can I come in now?
Yes.
Yes. I didn't quite get the entire question, but I suppose that in referring to the national chairman, it's referring to the national chief of SCACUF. Am I wrong? Like SCACUF?
Yes.
Okay. If Europe understands that we have formed SCACUF, then you will understand that we are working with the national chairman of the SCACUF. That I am online with him each and every other day, both on WhatsApp and directly. I was on the line with him by phone yesterday, and I have been made to understand that he will be talking to this conference also today. So we are working. That's why we have decided that what we have now is perhaps big for even the consortium to carry, and therefore there was the need, and there is the need for everybody to come and join together for us to push. I have been advised that we should stop discussions about what the apparent facts in the consortium, because discussing these issues time and time and again may continue to perhaps open the ones that are about to hear. So I would prefer not to answer that question, but I know that my brothers are in that conference, and that they should be able to tell that conference the truth about what happened prior to the release of that video. They are there, they should speak the truth to the conference.
Order.
Hello? Yes, I was saying that they should be able to tell Europe that we have no other choice but to do what we did. And all fairness and politeness, we did not remove them from the consortium. We really assigned them to their original assignment that they had given themselves in this struggle. Because as you know, the leadership of the consortium that was in hiding had come back open, and we needed to take things back in good stride, assume our responsibilities. Their responsibilities as a state of interim, which means whenever we came back, we will take over our responsibilities. The rest of the nitty-gritties, I beg not to state them here, because we need to allow those wounds to heal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jackson. I think we appreciate very much your time and your perseverance. Okay, one more question. If you are also in contact with Honorable Wilbur, and what are you doing together?
Let's get one more question.
You're going to answer the question about Honorable Wilbur, if you're in contact with him, or if you're working together.
Okay, so far I've not been able to touch base with Honorable Wilbur, and he's not been able to get to me. I have tried his number that I had, does not go through on WhatsApp, it doesn't go through directly. So if somebody has his number, I'll try it on WhatsApp, on Viber, it doesn't go through. If somebody can connect us, we will be grateful, because we really need to work together.
We thank you very much. You have exhausted your session, and you're not even be above time. I know you were online since 11 o'clock waiting for us, but we came late and we have some connection problems. Thank you very much, and I think on behalf of the participants here, we say God will guide and protect you. We keep working together. All the other leaders extend their greetings to you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on just the way to...
Thanks.
We continue with the questions to Comrade Milan. He took 2 questions, and there were 2 more questions. So we round up with Comrade Milan and we'll go to the next speaker. We still have 4 speakers on the line, and we are not going to waste too much time.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad it's a delegate from Spain. The question I want to ask, really, I wanted to ask directly to Mr. Tassan, but I think you are equally in a good position. My question is that I want to ask, there was a communique that Bohebek of Morris communicated last, I think a few days ago, about the formation of an interim government as a strategy towards our independence on the 1st of October. And since then, I've not heard SCACUF, because what I've made to understand is that Morris had endorsed SCACUF. Therefore, decisions that they should be, or they should have been communicated or discussed with SCACUF. So, Mr. Milan, my question here is, what do you have to say about Morris or Bohebek's announcement? Thank you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, delegates. My name is Oswald Tebin. from England, United Kingdom. My question to you, Comrade Milan, is the CPTM government has been in power for 57 years, and they are very skillful. At the state where we are in the struggle, we've come out with a semblance of resolutions to our issues, which the international community is recognizing that they are making efforts towards resolving these issues. For example, they put out a 2 billion CFA to recruit private teachers, to recruit 1,000 bilingual teachers. They've also created the Bilingual and Multicultural Commission. And as of Thursday, the Ministry of Justice has proposed resolutions which the lawyers, it was in the grievances which the lawyers did put forth. So what is SCACUF doing to counteract this semblance of solutions? Because the international community, knowing what they are, will turn around and say, okay, your problems have been resolved, so why are you still holding children back from going to school, or why are the lawyers not going back to court? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The first question that I got was to find out about the time frame. What is the time frame? We are running out of time. People are impatient. What are we doing about it? And I think my simple response to that is for those, and again, I think this tells us that as a people, in spite of our passion and the emotions and everything, our communication generally is still weak, because a 3-month plan, a quarterly plan was actually published. And my assumption is that it went down and everybody has seen it. So if people have not seen it, I'm going to try and push with the team and make sure that it is circulated again. There is a time frame, and what we have done in terms of the time frame is that we've limited ourselves until the end of April, I think beginning of May, for a simple reason. We are just facilitators, and our role is to try as much as possible and push our leaders to talk and walk in the same direction. By the 30th of April, we are hoping that we will withdraw completely. By then, the leaders would have been sitting around the table, they would have identified those individuals, and those individuals would then take things moving forward. So, question about time frames, we are not allocating upon ourselves the responsibility of putting in place a 1-year time frame, a 1-year plan, because we do not have the mandate, just to limit it to that. Now, in terms of money, and I think there was something about money, people will donate money, they will donate. I think that's true. It's already happening. I've been telling everybody from South Africa, I think over the past few months, we have raised no less than $50,000 to $60,000, which we've been supporting. I've been going to particular individuals and they're giving large chunks of money to me, but they cannot continue to do that. That is why we are proposing that we now need to move into a system where each and every individual will have to make contributions. We are adopting the Eritrean model where every citizen outside of the country will have to make a contribution on a monthly basis. $20 for 10,000 people will give us $200,000. And I think there's probably more than 1 million of us now. If everybody donates, that is a fortune. And based on that, we think that we can raise the money that will take this struggle to forward. And this will be up to the individual leaders, the individuals whom we select and we elect to take this forward. Our role is to try and facilitate, and by the end of this month, it will be in their hands. Teachers, now what are the initiatives that are being put in place given the situation we are sitting with? I think in the next couple of days, they are going to launch what is called Adopt a Teacher. We sat down, we did an analysis of the number of teachers who are presently without salaries. We are assuming that government teachers continue to be paid. We are hoping that we can negotiate with the missions to continue to pay their teachers, even if it's just 50%. Now the rest of the teachers, we did an estimate working with Wilfred, and I think it came to about 2,000 teachers. Now with 2,000 teachers, I'm sure there are 2,000 of us out there who are willing to make a contribution of $100 every month that can pay a teacher. $100 is approximately 50 to 60,000. Now, even for those who work for the private sector, for lay secondary schools, 30,000 will do the trick. So what we are hoping to do is launch and adopt a teacher campaign and I'm hoping that as many individuals as possible will adopt one teacher and ensure that they continue to support them. But there are lots of initiatives. I've already spoken about the television. Now, military, I hear about the Declaration of Independence in September, October, our military time frames. Like I said earlier, we do have the colleagues and the compatriots in the House who should be able to answer that question. From our side, and like I said last night, being able to mobilize funds and speaking the military language is very difficult. We are behind our leaders who advocate for self-defense because you can never defend the people by just talking. Let them go out there and do the action. We will mobilize the money. Now, in terms of the announcement on an interim government by Morris and what is the SCACUF position, I know that we have our compatriot, Big Brother Larry eto'o, who is supposed to be here with us. He was here last night. I don't know if he's here because he will be better placed to answer that question. But from the SCACUF side, remember that whatever I say here, I'm saying it as a facilitator. In exactly 3 weeks, somebody will be taking this mic, will be saying it with authority because they are mandated. But as far as I understand at the moment, and how we conceive, each and every movement has got their autonomy intact. We are not saying solve yourself and fall under. We are saying continue to do your work because you come with certain skills and specificities. What we are insisting on is that focus on the enemy, do not focus on each other. The moment we realize that you're focusing on each other, then we'll turn to history. So Maurice is in its right to take decisions as to where it wants to go. The question we should be asking as a people is that the right direction? If it's the right direction, I'm sure everybody will fall behind. If it's not, it will be apparent to everybody. So in terms of an interim government, from my, and this is my personal point of view, but it was also discussed at the conclave, we think that a leadership structure is essential and is urgent. That needs to be put in place. When I did the presentation, I presented to you what we feel is a leadership structure, which in my opinion is not just a leadership structure of 3 or 4 or 9 individuals sitting there and working in space, but something that is built on a foundation. Now, we could go out and decide that we want to put an interim government, give ourselves names, arrogate and call ourselves presidents. If you're running a presidency without, you're running your president without the presidency is one thing. I understand the importance of having some kind of government or entity that will be able to negotiate on our behalf. But lots of different movements across the world have called themselves lots of different things. The important thing is how you conduct yourself. It's important how you, what kind of constitution you put in place. The leadership and the followership that you have is not the title that you arrogate upon yourself. And what we are pushing for is that whatever leadership is put in place, it should be a leadership that responds to the need of our people. No leadership will succeed by hanging in the air. It has to have a following. For us to go out and mobilize money and get people to contribute their $20, you need people on the ground in different countries. Somebody has to go out there and mobilize them. That is why, in my opinion, we need to give the chance to people to build from the bottom moving up. Once you build from the bottom moving up, you're doing 2 things. You are ensuring that whatever leadership, interim government you're putting at the top has got legitimacy. 2, we are moving and strongly saying whatever money people are contributing, there needs to be accountability. And 3, those of our compatriots who have got skills, expertise, and experience, by putting in place this structure, we are giving the opportunity to grow through the ranks over time. And otherwise, we will sit with the same individuals doing the same thing over and over and getting the same result. Now, and finally, yes, last one. The last one, the semblance about the CP and the role and what it's doing. That is one of the weaknesses we have identified in us as a people. We are strong, we are solid, but we still have not mastered the craft of PR, public relations. Very often when we talk to the media, there is a lot of emotion, there is a lot of anger, but sometimes we don't express it the right way. I mentioned to colleagues in Berlin how much that demonstration that they did made a difference. We may not be aware that sometimes little actions that we take creates a whole lot of bubble. That caught the attention of the international community, And almost following that was the march on Pretoria at the UN offices. And like I was saying, we have compatriots who are sitting in positions where they cannot show their faces, but they've got important roles to play. And one of them is the person who's at the helm of the UN, the United Nations in South Africa, who's one of our own. He doesn't want to be seen, but the difference was that unlike petitions which we hand over to different offices, in this case we were handing over to one of our own. And in that office there were a number of individuals, and we communicated, I've been talking, and eventually they called to say they are going to do everything in their power to make sure that it goes up the lines. It ended up in Geneva. That's how important it was. And one of our own, still working for the UN, a former colleague of mine, called me from New York to say, Milan, what you guys did was a brilliant thing. We have pushed this thing. The government has been convened to come to Geneva and answer. And eventually somebody, the minister, went to Geneva to answer, which is what you're saying. Now, the government is able to explain and say, no, it's just a tiny minority, a group of extremists and so on. What we had lacked in that meeting was an individual who was able to articulate our issues, to counteract what the minister was saying. And at the moment, we have been discussing with these colleagues in the UN and other offices to see if we can identify one individual who can be our champion and our ambassador and our spokesperson, who is able to articulate our issues in the right manner.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize here that Comrade Milan will be available during coffee break, and at the end, you can meet him, you can ask individual questions. We are running out of time. But before we move to the next speaker, there's an announcement here. One of us is having the car SG66BG, Opel Black D. The windows are open. Maybe you did that unconsciously or something happened. Please check your car. We have two different cars. The Hyundai SG66BG and an Opel Black D. Please, the windows are open. Check your cars if any of these cars belong to you. Our next speaker will be Madame Tekla, and before she comes, or while she's arranging herself, we would like you to listen to one of our key speakers who was supposed to be here. That is Dennis Atemken, the African Union, and for some reasons he couldn't pick up his flight. So please, let's listen to him while Madame Tekla gets herself in order.
How the chocolate milk?
Chop day no, you don't pass. You come in on country. Chop day, we did not pass here.
Not chop that. Not all not chop.
No. We can.
And refreshment, no item 11 there.
What the check away available? You understand? What that is?
Volume of your player. Volume of the media player.
Gentlemen, I bring you my warmest revolutionary greetings. We are gathered here today in Belgium to build a stronger foundation for our independence and freedom. At this august occasion, I ask your permission to address an issue about which we are still, to some extent, divided. That issue is the issue of an interim government. Do the people of Ambazonia need an interim government at this point in their struggle or not? That is the issue I want all of us to examine together. There is no doubt that not all our liberation movements have the same age or experience in the struggle, or are at the same stage of preparedness for governance. Some have just recently been formed, and some have been in the struggle for as long as we can remember. The personal sacrifices, persistence, abnegation, and even suffering have not been the same. All of these are factors that play into our human feelings when an issue such as the formation of an interim government is raised. Some may see the idea of an interim government as a threat to their existence, others may see it as an opportunity to gain grounds, yet others may be lost as to what it all means, and still some others may be tempted to think they can go it alone. When we learn about other liberation struggles, we discover that in most cases they were based on the principle that the most popular or strongest liberation movement that was able to take over the capital imposed its will on how the government would be formed. However, these approaches were based on victory by military conquest. The movement that was able to chase out the occupation forces had the major say in the formation of the government. In some cases, these movements transformed themselves into political parties after victory and now had the opportunity of contesting democratically for the people's votes. Our struggle is somewhat different from these models. We are now virtually unanimous in the view that ours shall not be won by military conquest, even if we must have a military wing in the struggle. Many of our movements may not have been preparing themselves for the sudden change of direction that our struggle has taken. Some do not intend to transform themselves into political parties after victory, having been formed solely for the purpose of assisting the liberation of our territory. We can say with some measure of confidence that the current crisis has taken every group by surprise, with none sufficiently ready to take over power, even if it were granted today. More importantly, we now have the blueprint of how we shall overcome the enemy and gain our independence. That blueprint dictates cooperation rather than competition. It is a plan around which everyone willing to work can work. So we have many groups, but I am unable to describe them as competing groups to take over power. All were formed to find a better and quicker way to independence, but with less focus on power. That better and easier way has been identified. Some people are of the opinion that it is impossible for us to come together and that the only way it will happen is if one group had enough resources and influence to exercise the kind of control that will force other weaker groups to affiliate with it. This will especially be so if such a group can show the bright light of hope at the end of the dark tunnel of our enslavement. This is precisely what we saw with the consortium which lit the candle of hope in our people. That strong attachment, the strong attachment which our people had with the consortium, was not because the consortium was ready to form a government, but because they filled a vacuum in our people, the hope of freedom at last. While the view of one influential group attracting the others is correct in some ways, it depends too much on chance and may jeopardize the golden opportunity we have now to take over our territory. Chance in the sense that we cannot rely on the miracle of sudden influence. The impossibility to come together is not as a result of any visible handicap, but solely due to our inability to place the interests of our homeland above our smaller interests. This is something we can definitely overcome. Initially, when the revolution erupted into a mass movement, I was very worried about anything that might bring divisions amongst our people again. Looking at our previous experiences of forming governments, I feared that the government might divide us at the moment when we needed unity more than anything else. At that time, I suggested the need simply of a spokesperson for the struggle while shelving the idea of a government for much later. At the time also, it was not very clear to us how or when our independence would be won. Anything that could motivate our people and give them immediate hope was seized upon and spread like wildfire. People searched in newspapers and everywhere and quoted every statement that could support our case. We are still relatively in this stage, but things have become much clearer to us. Things have become so clear that I now see the need for an interim government as a matter of urgency. We have the blueprint to victory. In this blueprint, the role of an interim government is critical. Let me be absolutely clear. that we are not looking for unanimity, but for those who see the urgency for us to strike the rock while it is hot, to come together and do so. The idea of an interim government should not also be confused with the idea of dissolving all the groups to form one movement. No, that is not what we mean. We can have an interim government with all the groups still in place. The only difference will be that the interim government will suggest and persuade each group how best its efforts could be used in the struggle and use the group in that way. Our blueprint is such that individuals and different movements can be assigned to different tasks leading to independence. Cooperation rather than competition will deliver independence much quicker and with less effort on the part of individual movements. Let us apply the adage that many hands do light work to our struggle, and indeed it will be made lighter on everyone. Fellow countrymen, this is a special and critical moment in our history, the history of Ambazonia. Never before have our people been mobilized and ready for action to this degree. And fellow Ambazonians, let me warn all of us again and again that this readiness is a state of mind. Being a state of mind, it is fluid. We must not take it for granted that it will stay that way until our wranglings are settled. The enemy is working overtime, using its surrogates amongst us and everything in its power to undo that state of mind. We have wasted too much time, and we are still wasting too much time. Events might overtake us. While we procrastinate, groups are multiplying just to fill the vacuum of an interim government. There is no more time to waste. The first and most important reason why we need an interim government is that our people on the ground need it. They have been asking for it and understand its value better than we do. Those of us who are separated by distance from those in the heat of events at home can hardly enter into their shoes to experience what they are experiencing. Thus, we must listen to our people and take their suggestions seriously. Currently, there are too many voices, and as they say, too many cooks spoil the broth. Our people want to hear a unified voice behind which they can rally, a voice they can recognize as the voice of their own shepherd. They are ready for action, but the conflicting commands handicap rather than direct them. Secondly, our blueprint dictates the need for a formal declaration of independence. The declaration of independence itself, to be meaningful and have the weight it deserves, must be made by an interim government that is speaking on behalf of the territory and people of Ambazonia. It cannot be made simply by a splinter group. Such an interim government must have the power that every government has within its territory. It is this legitimacy that will facilitate enforcement of its commands. This is not something any single group can do on its own. Third, all negotiations with Republic du Cameroon have to be done only by a body that can speak on behalf of all of Ambazonia, and not simply a splinter group. Even if it is a dialogue we have all been talking about, it must be between two sides. The side of Ambazonia represented by its interim government and Republic du Cameroon on the other side. Whatever the case, no one can talk for Ambazonia who is not representing all of its peoples. Fourth, there are partners and nations out there that will not talk to any group other than the representative government of Ambazonia. We must always remember that no one group is able to commit the territory and people of Ambazonia. Not only that, other governments and organizations know that liberation movements can be dissolved at any time, and so they will not go into any serious business with groups with no certain future. They demand our representative government with which they can do business. Fifth, to seek recognition for the independence of Ambazonia, only an interim government can do so, because it will be talking on a state-to-state basis. Of course, any liberation movement can approach other states to talk about Ambazonian independence, but those states want a measure of certainty about what they are being told and who they are talking to. That certainty is provided by our interim government. Safe, when it comes to the application for membership of the UN, AU, ECOWAS, or any other organization to which Ambazonia hopes to belong, only our interim government is competent to make the application. This organization needs proof that whoever is applying is representing the entire population, and only our interim government is that proof. Fellow countrymen, if we procrastinate or even refuse to form an interim government, how are all these things going to be done? Our declaration of independence depends on all these things. They cannot be avoided. If you see the need for us to be free sooner rather than later, then you surely have also seen the need for an interim government. We cannot come so near to freedom and then delay it for reasons we will spend our lifetime regretting. Let us take the step, even if it is a leap of faith. Fellow Ambazonians, as you can see, our situation imposes on us a different route to independence than those struggles which are based on military conquest. Our situation dictates cooperation, not competition, because no one group is ready enough to provide what our collective efforts can provide at this critical moment when the decision must be made. Besides all of the above reasons, we need an interim government to coordinate and oversee our plan of action, to set timelines for delivery on each item in the plan, to mobilize collective resources for the struggle, to provide a unified voice to our people, and so on. Does it make sense to anyone here that every group should be doing its own defense, diplomacy, communications, all for the same territory, or that every group should be working on its own radio and TV and presenting conflicting views to the same countries whose support we are seeking? Does it make sense? Is cooperation so impossible for us to see or achieve? No, I think all of us see the need for such a government, which does not mean an end to individual movements, but only a coordination of their activities, the reduction or elimination of duplication of effort, and a lightening of our burdens. Once our interim government is in place, various initiatives will go through it and receive the necessary support as well as scrutiny they deserve, further helping to reduce duplication and confusion. As they say, where there is a will, there is a way. If you agree with me, we can turn our minds to the process of naming such a government. Let our leaders take care of that. And my fellow countrymen, I pray you agree and see the need for us to rise to the occasion and form our interim government, however imperfect it may be. We do not expect it to be perfect, but to be perfectible. And we all, with a good sense of purpose, can jointly make it what we want it to be. We shall learn to do by doing. And I can assure you that that will be a giant step forward. Let us proceed and overtake events before events overtake us. With our interim government, we are one solid step towards our independence. I thank you. Long live a sovereign and independent Ambazonia. God bless our beloved homeland, Ambaland.
Thank you very much. We are presenting our most honorable lady, and then I think I'll take the floor. And this commissioner is going to summarize it.
Southern Cameroons, oye. Ambazonia, oye. Woman, Woman, Good afternoon, everybody. Today, I'm here to talk about the role of the Southern Cameroonian woman in the struggle for freedom. So, when I was asked to make this decision on behalf of the women of Southern Cameroon, I was worried. if I was going to be able to represent their views completely. So I decided to contact a couple of women in and around Belgium to find out their feelings about this struggle. So I decided to contact some women to find out their views about, their feelings about this struggle. The views they expressed portrayed that their ideas were not fully represented by our brothers and leaders who are at the forefront of this struggle. The women reiterated that even though women make up a greater population of Southern Cameroons, they have been completely excluded from policy negotiations and from the organizations that enforce these policies. They complain that as far as this struggle is concerned, very few women have been empowered or even given the opportunity to be instruments of decision making. For example, look at the consortium, look at SCACUF, look at AGC, look at SCYL, look at Maurice. Where are the women in this organization? For me, after listening to these women, my own opinion was very, very different. I told them I would like to differ from the above stated views because I am a feminist and I see this struggle in a different light. To all the women out here, I have these questions for you and I need a sincere answer. As mothers, do you need someone's permission to defend your children when they are in danger? Do you put fear in front when it comes to defending your home? Now, concerning our struggle, what strategies have you brought forward that could change the direction of this struggle? What ideas can you bring to the negotiation table? My dear women, what have you done so far to create a positive impact in this revolution? You and I know the answer to these questions. Have we done something? Yes. Have we done enough? I say no. So let's stop complaining, get up and act. Let's draw inspiration from some feminist icons around the world. Women like Winnie Mandela, Angela Merkel, Theresa May, Hillary Clinton did not sit down and wait for somebody to call them to the negotiation table. By their words, their actions, their experiences, they fought their way through to the top and placed themselves in strategic positions to influence the politics and their nations. Today, with the ongoing crisis in our land, you and I have the opportunity to impact the future of our country. You and I have the opportunity to write our names in the history of our nation. Don't wait to be invited to the negotiation table. Let your actions, your words speak for you. So others will look for you to have you on their team and to negotiate with you. You are not going to run after them. They will look for you. In this struggle, I'd like to commend some women that I personally have noticed. Somebody like Kawala, I see she's making a lot of noise in her own domain. I also admire there's a lady called Sylvie Watikum, who understood the importance of Twitter. She made a tutorial, encouraged many people